and I'll take you through these over the course of the next sort of 15 minutes. So the first one is, I think, a handy way of just thinking about what is a brand. A lot of marketing is about building a strong brand that drives commercial success. But what exactly is a brand? And I think people find this confusing. So what I've done here is I'll give you a little illustration of what a brand actually is through a little anecdote. So during lockdown, I got quite bored. I didn't have any work to do. And I wanted to catch up on a series I'd only seen like 1 or 2 episodes of. And I thought, I must see that. I must see the rest of that. It looked great. But I couldn't remember the name of it, so I couldn't look it up on Netflix. But I knew my son had seen it. So I said, oh, what's the name of that program, that TV series? And he said, which TV? I said, well, I don't know the name. But I remembered it was about a policeman who travels back in time. And I remember it was John Sim played the main guy, the main actor in it. And it was like 1970s cops sort of show in style, but not the Sweeney because the time travel. And for some reason, I could remember it was named after a David Bowie song in his, kind of early Ziggy Stardust days. So I had all of these thoughts firing in my brain, apart from, as it happened, the brand name, if you like. And I think this, by the way, I'm sure a lot of you will have guessed it. The answer is actually Life on Mars. If you haven't seen it, you really should. I love that series. Anyway, the point is, a brand is just no more or no less than all the different thoughts, ideas, images, concepts that come to mind around the brand. That is the brand name is an important element of the brand, but it's only part of it. And that the more, and let me show you an example of a real brand, the more connections you have, the more vivid they are, and the more distinctive they are, that is what results in a successful brand that people remember and buy and pay more for. This is, by the way, a few years ago, I did this one for my associations of Apple. There's the name Apple, there's the logo, there's some products, there's the famous earbuds. I love music, so I always think of the iPod in particular, when I think of Apple. I think of Steve Jobs and the lovely design classics from that they've produced. So yours will have some things in common. You'll also have other things. The important thing is that it's rich and fresh. Okay, so if that's a brand, what do you need to think about if you, as a business person, want to build a brand? What are the considerations? What do you need to define, if you like? Well, I've got a handy framework with one of my favorite acronyms, the Pinata, to help. It's like a checklist to help you think about all the things you need to decide when you're building a brand, in order to build a brand. And like with a lot of effective marketing, it starts with knowing who your customers are, and then comes in the Pinata. So what's the purpose of the brand? What's the consumer insight that drives the brand? What need states is it relevant for? And what do you want to associate with the brand so that people think of it for those needs? And then testaments is the only false bit of the acronym. I mean proof points, as in the evidence, the things you can refer to that make people believe what you're saying. And then finally, assets, distinctive brand assets made famous by the Professor Byron Sharp, the things that actually help your brand get registered in memory. And let me give you an example. That's all theoretical, but you think about the Snickers brand. Tends to target younger adults. That's their customer base. That's their target audience. And the purpose is simple. It's not. I don't mean purpose in the sense of an ethical cause, but the purpose of Snickers is to fill you up when you're hungry, between meals usually. Fill you up when you're hungry. Now, the lovely insight that they've used to power their brand for a long time is that we all know that people aren't themselves. They don't act like themselves when they're hungry, when their blood sugar's low, literally. They get grumpy, or they get snappy, or they get quiet, or all sorts of things. So that's what kind of about the brand. And then the needs it's trying to address are the need states, are particularly that mid-morning snack between meals, the mid-afternoon snack, and also when you're on the move, you're too busy to get a proper meal. So the associations that the brand decided to associate with this these needs and that purpose is to revitalize. So revitalization and energy, as well as it being filling and tasting. And one of the key testaments they've used for forever, in fact, since they're called marathons, I think, which is that, well, one of the reasons they fill you up is because they contain nutritious things, peanuts. They contain peanuts. And then the assets, they used, you might remember they used Mr. T as a character in their advertising for quite a long time. So that's one of the assets. But the asset that's particularly strong now is you're not you when you're hungry, the actual end line. Now, if you can answer that for your brand, all of those questions, and you're clear on it, that puts you in a brilliant position to build a wonderful brand. Okay, so you know what a brand is. You've decided exactly what your brand wants to become and what you want to associate with it. How do you then use marketing, marketing activities and marketing content to build that brand, to activate that strategy? Now, there is nothing wrong with the 4Ps or the 7Ps. They stand the test of times. They are like headlines for the areas of the market activity that you need to, and decisions you need to make. But I think if you want to take your understanding a bit further, the marketing mix I is really helpful. But it's like the 4Ps, but with more detail, with modern language, and I think crucially, a way of thinking about how they all fit together to actually result in revenue and profit. So, for example, the two key areas are, you need to build brand predisposition. In other words, get people to be familiar with and think that your brand is relevant and potentially worth buying. People also call this brand equity. I think predisposition is a great word for it. And you use things like advertising, use paid media, you exploit your owned media, and hopefully you'll get some earned media, that's word of mouth, to build that predisposition. But you've got to remember that the user experience will have the biggest influence on this. If people try your product, don't like it, they won't be predisposed to buying it again. So we know that that's absolutely crucial. So that's your brand predisposition. But just because people kind of are predisposed to buying something doesn't mean they actually do, because they need to be triggered, usually, almost always. So you need to make sure that the activity and content along the path to purchase activates that predisposition, or converts it, if you like. And that means it's got to be available at the right place at the right time, so it's there. You need packaging, etc., that makes sure people notice it, especially in cluttered environments, and point of sale experiences that lead you in the right direction. And the price has got to be appropriate, given the competitive environment, what people think you brand. And if those the brand predisposition and path to purchase impact are strong, you get your purchase, leads to your revenue, etc. So I quite like, people find that quite useful to get their head around the kind of marketing mix. Okay, so we're up to the point where we know what brand we want to create and we understand how the mix fits together. But which media should you be prioritizing? There are so many different ways that marketers can communicate, different channels and formats, and ways of promoting your product. Which ones are right for your brand, and how do you decide? Well, this is where this media priority matrix comes in. A useful way of pinning down the key media channels for your brand are to just consider two aspects. The first one is, do you deliver something really exceptional? Genuinely have an offer that is significantly better or very different from, at least, your competitors. So do you deliver some sort of exceptional user experience, or is it, let's be honest, similar to a lot of your competitors? So unexceptional, maybe sort of average, reasonable, good, whatever you call it. That's one dimension. The other dimension is, what kind of category are you in? Are you in one that people are genuinely interested in? Maybe it could be high risk or just high interest, which means they tend to do a lot of research, thinking, talk to people, consider things, look at competitor alternative to what they're currently using, for example. Or is it, fairly mundane, routine, everyday thing that they're not that bothered by? There's not important. Life's too short to think about it. It's a low interest or low risk. Because the implications of which box you're in are huge. Let us take, for example, Tesla. For many years, Tesla has had a product that offers something completely different and a lot better than its competitors. Others are catching up, but it still offers an exceptional experience in a category that people spend a lot of time thinking about and researching and wondering about and talking about. So they've been the top right box, which means, let's take a look at the grid, which means that because of that, sampling becomes really important. If you've got a great product, you need to get it into the hands of people. It's one way or another, which is one reason why they introduced showrooms in places that you don't often get showrooms. Like you've probably seen them in shopping centres. They've done this in multiple countries, so they're really easy for lots of people to conveniently sit in it, and hopefully organise a test drive, and then yearn for it for the next 10 years as they save up the money to buy it. And you get, and from that, and because of the exceptional experience, you get a lot of positive word of mouth earned media. It also means that your owned media goes a long way. For example, they use PR and Twitter channels extremely effectively, from the owner in particular. So that's one way. Now, I won't go through all the boxes, but if you think about the opposite extreme, if you're kind of a pretty okay but nothing special packaged goods brand, in a category that people buy all the time, and it's not a real talking point, a typical, everyday purchase. It's people don't tend to research the purchase ever, really. You look at sort of search levels, and they're extremely low for the brands and the category. So people aren't really likely to go and find information, even if it's there. So you're going to need to rely on paid media to drive some level of awareness and familiarity, and nudge people towards your brand and the competitors. So now, I think that's a very practical framework to think about, which broad channels you could and should be using. But what about, finally, okay, those are the kinds of channels. How can you combine channels effectively? We know that using multiple channels is considerably more effective than just using a single channel. And the reason for that is you need to kind of develop the brand or build the brand and activate it. I was just talking about the combination you need of brand advertising that builds brands, particularly channels like TV and cinema are brilliant at building that because of the emotions you can create through video, long form video. But you need to combine that with activation media that, particularly for online purchases, can remind people of your wonderful brand and to keep it salient just at the moment, just before they might be able to go and go online and actually purchase your brand. So paid search is wonderful, social media advertising, or even outdoor, actually near the outlets where you stock your products. So that's all I wanted to say. And then, obviously, I wanted a quick advert, of course, to say, if you like that kind of illustration, I've got a huge website now, smartmarketing.me, where you can look about the book, but also it's got these illustrations with written commentary, a bit like I've just been talking through, around all the topics you can see on screen, and all of the graphs are free for anyone to use, so long as you just keep my reference in the bottom right-hand corner without even asking me, which is a kind of my gift back to the marketing community for a fun career, basically, most of a fun career. Anyway, that's all I wanted to say. Thank you so much for your time.